See, most people know Rich Porter as the flashy young Harlem hustler, immortalized in a cult classic film, Paid in Full. Now, the streets admired his style, his loyalty, and his grind. But what if we told you that behind all the chains, the jewelry, the cars, and the smile was the cold-hearted hustler who didn't hesitate to greenlight people close to him? And we're not talking about Alpo this time. The streets don't always match the big screen. According to long-term whispers in Harlem and all over NY, Rich Porter, he got his own friend, Sean Moe, murdered. And not by accident, not in a shootout, not friendly fire, but allegedly by calling in a favor. A favor from one of the most feared men in Harlem history, Clarence Preacher Healy. Now, Preacher, he didn't just kill for fun, of course. It was about some paper. He was about his business. But this time, the contract came straight from Rich Porter. Word is, Rich Porter, he paid him 10 grand for the hit. And just like that, Sean Moe, he was gone, erased like a bad memory. But Sean wasn't the only one. Preacher, with his torture chambers and reputation for handling beef with no emotion, would end up doing multiple murders for Rich Porter. Most of them weren't flashy. Some were downright petty. But to Rich, the business was bigger than brotherhood. If you crossed that line, it was handled, no warnings, no second chances. Now you might look at me like, damn, why you going in? But it's just facts. We gotta cover the good, the bad, the ugly. But you know I can't be biased about this shit, people. But there was one hit that just stood out. It was just ruthless. The murder of Junior Broom, the younger brother of Daryl Barnes. This wasn't just some random corner boy. This was the family to someone in Rich's own circle. The story goes that Junior was moving sloppy, allegedly switching Rich dope with soap and roughing up customers Rich had lined up. Now, that's bad for business. Come on now, that's no question. But instead of giving him a warning or a beatdown, Rich allegedly called Preacher again. And just like that, Junior was dead. And of course, in the hood, the word spread super fast, and people started to question whether Rich was moving with logic or losing his soul. The streets thought that murder was too harsh, even for Harlem standards. Now, the streets is the streets. People already know that when it comes to being a kingpin or a hustler, you might have to bust your gun. Some people do, some people don't. It is what it is. But you can't give grace to a kingpin. You can't feel bad for a kingpin. I mean, shit, you can do what you want, but I'm just saying, it is what it is. You know, they get shot, they shoot people. That's just what it is. So, the question stands. Why did Rich Porter even have Preacher on payroll in the first place? Now, we could break down the logic, which we always do on this channel. Now, for one, fear is leverage. Having someone like Preacher around you was like having a nuclear bomb in your back pocket. People feared Preacher, I don't care what nobody say. He had a chill stretch. People knew not to play with him, man. He had a clear stretch in jail, so that tells you right there, he was no one to mess with. But just like I said, people feared Preacher more than they feared the bullets, because that torturing and rapings and all the rumors, nobody want parts of that. Like, who got time for that? His name alone made people pay debts, shut their mouths, or disappear from Harlem entirely. Now, two, Preacher didn't just do the murder. He collected debts. He collected money for Rich. If someone owed Rich and didn't want to pay, Preacher showed up. It is what it is. A lot of people won't speak out about this because they're trying to protect the image of these individuals, of their friends. But of course, they holding in money. That information that they have that we don't know about, or what they think we don't know about, it's money. So they're gonna come out later on and let us know what's going on. But as long as this information is concealed, they got some money, they sitting on some paper. Yeah, but anyway, if someone owed Rich and didn't want to pay, Preacher showed up. That was the end of conversation. Either they paid or they prayed. That was kind of corny, but whatever. Now, anyway, the third thing is that Rich Porter, he wasn't emotional, he was strategic. He knew having Preacher on his team gave him reach. While others relied on fists or pistols, man, Rich, he didn't have time for that shit. I mean, if it really went down to it, he busted his gun a couple times, but Rich, he outsourced fear itself. But Preacher didn't respect everyone who came to him. That's one thing. And that might have been the downfall of Rich Porter. In fact, Preacher thought the dudes who hired him to do their dirty work were soft. To Preacher, if you needed another man to handle your enemies, you didn't deserve to be in the game. And sometimes, Preacher didn't just take the money, he came back around for the person who paid him. He had zero loyalty, and Rich knew that. And that's where it gets deep, because there was another major player watching all this unfold, and that was y'all favorite, and that was Alpo. When Alpo heard how Rich had his own friend, Sean Mo hit, it stayed with him. Said, yeah, Poe was a killer, but he believed in lines at that point. Like, this was way before he went to DC. This was way before that he knew he had to play dirty in the game. Seeing Rich move and seeing how people in DC move, he just had to play the game at a higher level. But he thought to himself, if Rich could line up his own friend, what was stopping him from lining Alpo up? See, that seed of paranoia grew roots. Every deal, every phone call, every move from Rich Porter. After that, it looked a little different in Alpo's eyes. He started questioning Rich's motives, his silence, his body language. The trust was cracked. See, this is where the conversation takes a dark turn. A lot of people hate Alpo for what he did to Rich. When he watched the movie, they hate what Rico did to Mitch. And rightfully so, it was cold, calculated, betrayal at its highest, at the highest level. But was it karma? Was that shit karma? Now, that's the uncomfortable question most people avoid. Everyone fell in love with the paid in full version of Rich. You know, the smooth talker, the family man, the big brother. But nobody ever tells you about Rich Porter's victims. You know, the guys who trusted him, the young ones who allegedly he had killed. The homies that got lined for crossing the business line that they didn't even know exist. Ask yourself this, if the streets really knew Rich's full resume, would they still mourn him? Would they still wear t-shirts with his face on it? Would they still say quotes from the movie? Would they still treat Alpo as the devil or as just a mirror? This is where street logic and morality clash. Rich Porter was a product of the game, of course, but was also a cold player in it. Having Preacher on retainer wasn't just a business move. It was a sign of how far he was willing to go to protect his empire. And when you bring in someone like Preacher, and the rules changed, man, there's no rules. And it backfired. It's no longer about loyalty. It's about the leverage, about survival. So now viewers have to ask themselves, if Rich could greenlight his own friends, was he ever loyal? If Alpo had to look over his shoulder around Rich, was his paranoia wrong? And if both were snakes, who was quicker to strike? Because in this world, ain't about who's right or wrong. Because in that world, which is a world that many people don't understand, it ain't about who's right or wrong. It's about who strikes first. It is what it is. Hit me up in the comments, don't be a stranger. Let me know what y'all think. You know, it ain't no such thing as a wrong answer. But get the likes up, man, show love. Check out the playlist if you're new. Subscribe to the channel, hit the Patreon. Man, hit up members22.com, cop your fragrance. Hit me up on the gram. We out, man, y'all take care.